So now we're going to go over how to service your regulator. The regulator is in the grip of the gun. And to get to it, it's very simple. You're just going to remove your ASA here. Now to remove your ASA, you're just going to take these two screws in the bottom of the ASA out. And then the ASA itself will just slide out. So put my wrench in this way to break it loose. Break those two loose, and I will unscrew both screws. Every once in a while you'll drop an Allen wrench, especially when you're trying to be quick. So, those two screws out. Now our ASA will just pull down, and that will slide the ASA off. Now, one thing we want to show you here is that this ASA, it's a very cool design, the way that the regulator works. So you're going to have, I don't know the official term that Empire is using for this, but you have this transfer tube here, which typically they're just hand tight. So you can unscrew them. If yours is too tight, I don't know if you can see here, but there is a little flat for a wrench here on this piece. So you could actually take the O-ring off, get a wrench to break that loose. I'll pull this out to show you. Now in the ASA itself, we have the lever that turns the tank on and off, so it's going to move this pin inside of here. When you flip it back, it's going to move the pin back to turn your tank on. That allows air to go through the through to the regulator then. And what you got here is you have this set screw. You see that silver kind of pointy screw. Screwing that in and backing it out, what that's going to do is that's actually going to move this little plunger piece. So let's see if we can show you here. So what that's going to do is, you see you got the body of the tube here. There is an O-ring inside of there that's going to seal against the bottom of the poppet, which I'll show you that in a second. But other than that, that's all this really is. It's literally just a tube, two O-rings here for air to enter the system, and then the O-ring in the inner part there to seal against the bottom of the piston of the regulator. The next part you're going to have here is this is actually going to be the part that is going to allow you to adjust the pressure of your regulator. So what happens is this set screw is actually going to push on this brass piece. So when I screw it in, it's going to move this brass piece closer to the poppet. When I back it out, it'll move it farther away from the poppet. Now, by moving this piece, the actual seal for the regulator is in the bottom here. At DBS, we actually do like kind of a regulator class, so I'll explain it roughly here. But if you attend that class, you'll know exactly how pretty much 99% of the regulators in paintball work. But the bottom line is that the piston is going to come down and seal against this black seat that you see there. And the farther that you move this away, the more pressure that's going to be required to build up on the top side of the piston to push the regulator down against the spring pack to shut the air supply off at whatever pressure you have this thing adjusted to. So if you ever had any like creeping issues, that black seat is what you're going to want to change there. So anyway, now for basic servicing needs though, I would pop this piece out, I'd wipe it off. You know, you can lubricate this O-ring here. Typically on regulator seats, you don't have to lube them at all. I like my stuff to be really clean, so for the sake of the video, I'll wipe all this stuff off. But typically, like on a regulator, most people are going to lube their regulators if they ever do. Like for myself, I would probably, back in the day when I was playing all the time, shooting, you know, a bunch of paint, I would lubricate my bolt and I would lubricate my regulator before each event, so each national event, and I was probably shooting 2 to 4 cases each week. So a good amount of paint was being shot. I wouldn't necessarily, like, if you're not shooting that much paint, I'd probably lubricate the reg once every 30,000 shots, 30 to 50,000 shots. And if you're not having consistency issues, that kind of stuff, then like I wouldn't worry about going overboard. So anyway, while I was talking to you guys, I just lubricated the bottom O-ring on our brass piece here. I'm going to slide it back inside there. I will put a little bit of lube on these O-rings here, and then I'm going to screw this back into my ASA, and then we'll show you like the workhorse of the regulator. Now when I put this in, I'm just going to go hand tight, so that way, you know, it's easy to get out, shouldn't shake loose. Now what you got here in the bottom of the grip, see if we can get a little better light there, you have the two tubes here. You're going to have one is going to hold just regulated air that goes to the bolt assembly, so it gives you a very high volume of air that can be delivered to the the ball, to the bolt assembly, so you typically won't have any drop off or recharge issues. And the other tube is where the regulator is going to do its work. So you'll have two pieces that are here, and actually I'll slide this part of the grip off here so you can see that. Is you got your spring, so take the spring out, and I'm going to tap this just because that's what I've kind of always done. But you can take and put something inside the poppet, kind of cock it a little bit, and pull it out like that so you can get it out. You do want to make sure that you're not damaging the face, this lower edge here. If you do that, it'll cause reg creep. So I just find a smaller Allen, I go straight in, just cock it just enough to pull this thing out. And even if you just get it to where the thing's just, you know, bare sticking out to where you can grab it like that, that's fine too. So I'll pull this out. I'm gonna set the gun down, and I will wipe my piston off here, wipe off the bottom half. So like we talked about, this lower half here is going to actually seal against that O-ring inside the groove there. So it's riding on that O-ring. And then the bottom edge is going to seal against that black seat that I showed you guys. So what's essentially happening here is, it looks like the way this reg works is you're going to have air that's going to enter between these two O-rings, those little holes there. Air is going to enter there. It's going to be allowed to go through the center of this piston up to the top half of the regulator here. And as pressure builds up, it's going to actually push down against this piston, against this O-ring, excuse me. And it's going to push down against that spring pack, and it's going to eventually push down hard enough to make this edge meet that seat, and that's going to shut off the air supply that's allowed to get to the top half of this, or to the upper end of the regulated air side of the regulator. So what we're doing, like I said, when we're adjusting this, the screw there, is by screwing it clockwise, by screwing it in, we're moving the actual bottom seal there, the seat, closer to this piston. When we back it out, we're moving it farther away. And by doing that, when we move it farther away, it's going to take more pressure to push against the spring pack to push this all the way down to shut it off. When we move it closer, it's going to take less pressure. So that's how we're getting that adjustment. And all that regulated air is going to build up in the grip frame on basically both sides of this, the tube here. So that'll then go into your bolt assembly. So what I'm going to do, because I want this thing to be nice and clean, is I'm going to take my rag that I kind of showed you with the bolt assembly too. So I'm going to go into this channel here that the regulator goes. I'm going to wipe this out. That'll help get any debris, any buildup, cleaned up inside there. Really, it's not very dirty at all because the gun's relatively new, but over time stuff can build up, and again, the cleaner everything is, the better. So wipe this off. I'm going to pop this O-ring off. I would never, just because it's a huge pain in the butt, I will not be taking out that inner O-ring there, and I typically don't do it. Cleaning those grooves is super hard for that. If you had a super dirty regulator, you could definitely do it, but typically it's not needed. Just taking the O-ring out and changing it if you needed to would do the job. So next, wipe off the O-ring. Reinstall, set O-ring, wipe off the spring pack because you really don't need any grease on this thing or any dirt or debris. Just kind of, the more dirt and debris you have, the more risk it is of getting in the gun. I'm going to put a little bit of lube here. See, you got a nice little coating there. I'm going to put the, actually I won't put the spring on quite yet. Lube the bottom. Good amount there. Set this back in. And now I'm going to reinstall this into the actual gun itself. I will put a little bit of lube on the little plug here. This just plugs up the other regulated side chamber. So let's make sure we get our grips back on so that we don't have a problem there. Take and reinstall the ASA. Drop our two screws back in. And then when I put these screws back in, I'm going to tighten them up. But I'm going to just get one of them down to where it kind of stops and it's snug. And then I'm going to do that with the other one. And then I'm going to torque it down a little bit. And torque the other one down. And that is how we are going to service the regulator on the Empire Syx marker.